Natalie, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
So, I would like to hear a little bit about the work that you do and how you came into this work from your writing background.
So, the work that I do is a mix of nervous system, somatic, and emotional mindset work. And I've kind of picked the most effective tools from all of that and bridge them all together to help you really update your biology, your nervous system, and your psychology so that they're on the same team and that you really feel like they're your friend and your partner and going after your goals and visions instead of this big block that tends to prevent us and creates a lot of behavior that we don't want. So that's really what I help people do now. And the road to getting there is a really long, windy road with lots of parallels. But I think I always was a teacher and a coach. Like since I could ride, I was like, let me teach you how to ride, and I had lots of opportunities to do that. So I was always teaching kids and kind of noticing behaviors and what worked and what didn't. And I was always really interested in psychology. And then I from a series of events, I went back to school full time and I studied psychology and research science. I studied in a learning and performance lab. And then I was on track to get my PhD and I noticed that none of the modalities worked. And so I had a lot of resistance to spending 6 years learning them. And I talked to my professors about it and they said, hey, I think you're onto something. I think you're picking up on a pattern. Maybe you should go and learn things through certifications and you're always welcome back, which is a huge thing for a professor to say. To get into a PhD program is really hard. You have to get into the lab and the school. And so then a paralleled event took me to Asia and I was all of a sudden teaching kindergarten in Asia. And I was realizing that nothing was working as far as like helping them learn. It was really ineffective behavior. How we dealt with behavior wasn't really working. So I just started studying so much about what is the root of behavior and what do children in fact need to come primed, ready to learn. And it brought me to the nervous system. And then I noticed within my class when I met their emotional needs that they were learning so easily. And I never had behavioral problems. I never had the need for timeout or to raise my voice. And my class kind of ran like clockwork. And then I found myself head of school and teaching other teachers how to do it. Yeah. And then from there I was like, okay, this is really what it is. And I found different certifications and different things to help me, help other people. Cause I was like, okay, now I want to help adults and people learn what I've learned. I want people to have the freedom that I feel. And then that naturally brought me back to athletes and equestrians because that's where I spent majority of my life before school.
Yeah, that's amazing. The thing that shocks me too is like, you're so young to have all of that experience. Like, I think you and I are probably around the same age. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't done all of that. That's a lot of career experiences and a lot of life experiences too. Why does nervous system regulation have anything to do with performing well in our sport of horseback riding? I think so many of us can see in 2024, so many of us are familiar with, okay, I know that, for instance, like nervous system regulation might have something to do with children behaving in class. Like that maybe feels familiar, but performing well in a sport, maybe that is not quite as familiar to us, especially one that involves a horse. Like that's a whole other added layer. So why do we have to think about this?
Well, let's start with just performance in general. So performance by nature, competition by nature to your biology, your nervous system is considered a cue of danger. If you take it back to evolutionary purposes, like we were in competition for food and survival. So now, and it's the same when we're in competition, when they're in the arena, we're trying to literally outperform other people. And there's judgment, there's eyes on us. This alone is a cue of danger to our nervous system. And so if we're not able to create our own physiological sense of safety. We will be at the whim of whatever our biology, our neuroception, our nervous system's intuition is picking up on. And by nature, competition is a cue of danger. And so if you're not acknowledging reality and then working within that reality, you're going to be really hindered by this entire intelligence system that's trying to keep you alive. And it's a really bad analogy, but it's simple. This is not scientific at all. I just think it helps people understand. You can think of your nervous system as a bucket, okay? And if you have any past traumas, and I'm not talking big T, just any disconnection from self or other is what is considered a trauma to your nervous system. So if you have any traumas, if you have any stored stuck emotion, if you haven't processed things as they come, your nervous system's holding on to that. You might not consciously remember it, but your nervous system absolutely does. And so it's keeping score of all of that, and it's holding on to all of that. And so your bucket might be 90% full just on the day-to-day level. And then you add something like stress and pressure, and it's going to take you're not going to have the capacity for it. And your nervous system is going to take you into two of its defensive states. And which one it brings you to is really unique to you. And we could talk about that, but it's not going to be optimal for performance, where you need to be in a flow state, when you need to have access to all of your muscle memory, all of the good patterns that you've put into to use. You need to have, those need to be available. And if you don't have a nervous system that can uphold stress and pressure, which even if you're competing well, you could still use this work. Most of us don't, and we could get into why. But that's why we have to clear your bucket, get it really to a neutral place, and then widen its capacity for stress and pressure.
Got it. You've talked to me about 3 nervous system states. There's safety, there's fight and flight, and then there's freeze. What do each of these feel like so that we can recognize them in ourselves? Like, oh, I felt that before.
Yeah. So the safety, or the science word, is ventral vagal. And I like to use the sentence, the world is and I am, like the story for each state. So the story for ventral vagal might be, the world is happening and I'm okay with it. Or like, the world is happening to me and I'm grateful, or for me and I'm grateful. It might sound like that. Like, it's just a really grateful, like, gratitude lives here, flow states live here, peace, but not in the sense that we think like, oh, we've meditated for 1,000 hours, but just like aware and okay, a sense of deep okayness will live there. And then the sympathetic, which most people are really familiar, it feels like a shark. There's lots of mobilizing energy. And that doesn't mean that necessarily you're moving forward. You could have lots of mobilizing energy, but be kind of stuck in it. And it's just like so much energy is happening inside of you. But you're either trying to run away from the threat, you're trying to fight the threat. But there's lots of energy. The world could, or the story could be like, the world is moving fast and I'm trying to keep up, or the world is dangerous and I'm a fighter. Could sound something like that. And then this dorsal vagal shutdown, you can think of it as like a turtle. It's trying to survive the threat by going inwards. You know, this is when we're like watching Netflix, procrastinating, and procrastination actually can live in sympathetic too, but it's very, very common in this dorsal, like this very avoidant stage. It's like you're just trying to create some shelter away from all of these cues of danger that are happening outside. There's not a lot of energy happening. You feel really withdrawn. You feel like you're in a fog. And the story there could be something like, the world is happening and I'm not in it, or the world is happening and I'm withdrawing, or the world is fast and I am stuck.
How is our body operating differently in these 3 states, or is it?
So differently. Oh my gosh. So differently. I don't even know where to start. So in safety, everything's working as it is. Your body is using all of its resources to go well, to metabolism, digestion, heart rate. Like, everything is really stable. Everything is really optimal. This is the epitome of wellness when we are in safety. and we're feeling really connected to everything, and your body, I'm not saying you're perfect, right? Like if being in safety doesn't guarantee that all of a sudden you're a superstar, but it does guarantee that you can have access to your skills, and you can have access to the parts of your brain that can allow and inhibit you to create the environment for you to learn and to gain the skills. Sympathetic, you are not in the state that you can access your skills or learn new skills. Think about it from an evolutionary point of view. You're trying to run away from a tiger. Why would you need to be learning a new skill? No, you need to just be forward focused, getting away. And so your hips get really tight here. You don't have peripheral vision here. It's hard to like process everything that's going through, because why would you need to? You have a very singular focus. So you could be getting information, you could be getting good information and not being able to receive it. And then same with the dorsal vagal shutdown, you're not in the position to learn or to access your skills. You're in the position to hunker down. This feels really shameful. Like you can notice a collapse in your body wanting to shrink away. You can think about like going down the center line when it's not going well, that really like shameful, don't look at me, let's just get this over kind of sense.
So performance for athletes is not, it seems to me that you would have to be somewhere in between these. Like there is an element of stress, but you have to also be able to access your skills. So what is that performance zone, and what does that feel like?
I wish I could show you. I have a really great diagram for this, but yeah. So most people think, that it's like sometimes I have that like competitive edge, and sometimes I don't have it. Sometimes I'm in that flow state, and sometimes I don't.
But I don't have any control over it. It's just what happens on the day. Yeah.
Which is what happens on the day. And they do some things to try to create control. Like, I've heard like I get mad, or I listen to sad songs. I mean, I've heard some really not science-based things that people do to try to replicate that state. And really what they're doing is they think that they perform better under stress and threat, which is just not biologically accurate. And where you perform best is if you go to safety, you're in safety. And then very scientifically, then you have a vagal break, which is kind of like a break that lets a little bit of the energy in, because as you notice, I'm sure you've seen in so many people, it's like a little bit of sympathetic just takes them to 100% sympathetic. Like there is no slowing it or letting it in. Like this is like when you can see, like people in sports getting in fights or breaking rackets, or in our sports, like getting really aggressive with their horse or their coach. We have to train that vagal break to let in a bit of sympathetic energy, because actually stress and pressure is a very good thing as long as you have a tone vagal break and a capacity to hold for it, and it's not a cue of danger. And so it actually brings you into this kind of flow state, this, I call it peak performance state, where you can access all of your skills. There's a focus that we wouldn't get just in safety, because safety is a very we want to play as a mix of safety and sympathetic. So you can think of it like that. And so we want a system that holds for a little bit of sympathetic, and it feels like a flow state, and like I can do anything and there's nothing to avoid.
Talk to me about, so what my assessment of what you're saying is that stress can be really good for us if there's a release of it at some point, or there's a break from it at some point.
Yeah.
So not all the time. Is that correct?
Exactly. Well, not all the time. And that's what a lot of people would say is that like, and it's very biologically accurate, is that we're meant for acute levels of stress. What happens is we have our brain is actually an employee of the nervous system, which most people don't understand that. They think it's the other way around, that our nervous system is an employee of the brain. And the brain, 80% of the time, is an employee of the nervous system. So what happens is, this is really important, okay? This is really important for everyone to listen to, and this is really important if you're a person feeling really stuck in life. What happens is your nervous system, just from its own intuition, we have no control over that. And I can tell you how that's formed, but we have no conscious awareness of that. Just like we have no conscious awareness of metabolism, breath, lungs, all of those things that are happening based off the nervous system, okay? We'll put you into a state based off of what it's picking up on. Then your brain makes meaning of that state. So let's say you're in dressage warm-up, okay? And all of a sudden, wow, yeah, your confidence is dipping low. Like your horse is inverted, it's tripping a lot. You know, there's every professional with every fancy horse just zooming past you, just full of confidence, you know, and you're just shrinking, okay? And your nervous system is picking up on all of that, okay? And now your brain is making a meaning that says, I'm not good enough to be here. And so that's how we get so stuck. Is it's not actually that stress and pressure is a bad thing. One, you don't have capacity for it. So we need to feel it. We need to gain capacity for it. And then we also need to update that misunderstanding that you're not good enough to be here, because that misunderstanding from your brain will then recycle the somatic, the dysregulation to your body. And now both things are working in this downward dysregulated spiral. And so I like to work on two things. I like to build your capacity for stress, but also I like to update your psychology so the things that used to also create stress or keep recycling the stress aren't there. So it's a much cleaner stress. Like it's just what it is. It's just a sensation in your body instead of I'm not good enough to be here.
Yeah, it's not intertwined with like your self-worth and all these other stories that you tell yourself.
Which is so important and a big piece of the work. And none of those stories are going to be updated by just talking or giving evidence. That's where most people get stuck in talk therapy or other sports psychology work. You can't just tell yourself you're good enough. Your nervous system's not going to believe it. So you have to feel not good enough. You have to feel the sensations that brings up, build capacity around it. And then from that neutral place, maybe you can influence the story, but not without regulation first.
One of the things that you said a couple of minutes ago is that no one can learn under a feeling of threat.
No one.
Why?
You're just not in the right biological state for learning. And so when there's a threat, the top part of your brain flips off. All of the parts where learning, memory, the neocortex, it just it goes offline. You don't have access to it.
I want to make sense of this from a practical standpoint because so many people listening are thinking about this a lot right now with like videos that are going around on social media and conversations that are happening about what is effective coaching and what's bullying and what's not. But we also have to think about not just the coach's effect to a learning environment, but also the horses. Mm-hmm. I mean, as you're talking about this, I'm like, well, I could feel threat from my coach. I could also feel threatened by my horse or the environment that I'm in. It doesn't just have to come from one thing. So what you're telling me is when I'm riding, if I feel like my safety is threatened, whether my emotional safety or my physical safety, usually it's emotional safety, perhaps by a coach, physical safety, perhaps by a horse, that either one of those scenarios, my body might be doing the thing I'm telling it to do, or that my coach is telling it to telling me to do, but I'm not actually learning. I think we have to distinguish between you can do something and not learn it.
Yeah, you can. Yes, that's actually a huge part. And like, in all of my major certifications I'm in a really amazing certification right now. He was a a pro tennis player, and now he's an expert in polyvagal theory and teaches how to coach on a performance level. And he always is talking about how the state that you're learning matters, because that's where you will have access to it. So if you're learning it in a sympathetic state, you're not going to have access to it in any other state. So it'll become like a reflexive pattern of that state. So you really need to, your state needs to be a priority of yours while riding, and almost a number one priority, not just because of, we want to get better, but because you have a responsibility to your animal to be showing up and not a defensive or not a shutdown state. And you have a response, your animal is looking to you. It's a very reciprocal relationship. It's looking to you too. So you have a really big responsibility to know what state you're in and know that the reflexive properties that come from each state. Like if you're in a sympathetic state, your aids are going to be a lot harsher, a lot more punishing. And when you're in a dorsal vagal shutdown state, your aids are going to be really ineffective. You're going to be cut off from communication from your horse. Your horse is going to feel like he's alone out there. And in fact, worse than alone, you're giving all of this energy, but nowhere to go with it. So we have to be really aware of what state we're in and the cues that we're picking up on.
So we are responsible for taking note of the state that we're in. And I would say an extension of that is if we are in a state where we're going to be unable to learn or we're going to be unable to communicate with our horse, that we do something about it. What might that look like? Does that mean like getting off your horse and regrouping? Does it mean I shouldn't compete at this show today? I'm not ready for it. Does it mean having a conversation with my coach about like, hey, this is really freaking me out, or the way you're talking to me is freaking me out, or this exercise you're asking me to do is freaking me out? Like, what can that look like? And can we get to a place where we're just like shapeshifters and we can actually just regulate ourselves on the spot?
Such a good question. So let me tell you something that's really important. I can almost guarantee, not just in performance, but in your life, most of your issues and most of the things that are happening and the conflict that you're feeling and the resistance you're feeling towards life is because you're currently outsourcing your safety. You're saying like, I can feel this way if this happens. I can feel this way if they act this way. I can feel, fill in the blank. And that's normal. We don't need to shame ourselves from that. I can explain it from a biological lens. Like from birth, we need our parents for survival. They are our source of safety. And so we become and do all of the things that ensure our safety. So we say, do, and think in ways that gain more connection with our parents. This is happening really unconsciously because we need that connection for survival. And the way that biology was set up was that we were supposed to get so many safe and reliable co-regulations with our parents that then when we're developed, then we can self-regulate. What I found in practice is that no one got as much emotional attunement as they need. That's not to blame anyone, but that's just to honor our human experience.
You're saying this to the parent of a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. Who also works full time. We'll unearth this later.
I can tell you so much. There's actually like a really good statistics that I tell parents. It's like it only needs to happen 70% of the time. So it's not that we don't need to be perfect, but it does have to have this overall global sense that she understands me and she knows how to support me. And she cares. So, and for whatever reason, because the demands of life and whatever else, our parents weren't able to give us that. And so we're actually kind of still stuck looking to the outside world to make us safe. That is a very ineffective position to be in.
Right, because you have no control over it. You are
boy,
just
do we
subject
try.
to the whims of the world. Yeah. And
but boy, do we try to have control. And I say this in the nicest way, but then it becomes controlling and manipulating. And I mean manipulation in the true sense, like take out the judgment. Like, but we try to make others feel a certain way so we can feel a certain way. And we do that with coaches, with horses, with everything. And it's just ineffective. And it's also not realistic. We don't have control of anything. We have very little control. And so, but the thing that we can control is we actually can begin to create our own safety, our own physiological sense of safety that regulates ourself. So that's number one. You have to, one, understand that it's now your responsibility. It's no one else's responsibility to make you safe. Two, now you have to learn how to do that because we're not taught. We didn't learn. It's something that we do, in fact, need to learn. We get it done by a very paradoxical way. We feel safe by feeling everywhere where we don't feel safe, and how that actually, the sensation of that feels in our body. All of it is looking to be met because our systems think that connection is survival, connection is safety. So when we tune into ourselves, when we attune, when we turn towards emotion, our nervous system feels connected to, then we can move into states of safety. So now to go back to your question, first of all, that all needs to be done outside of the arena. You're never going to create safety if you don't know how. Okay. You're not, and then in your most triggering situation, now all of a sudden you're supposed to be the safety master. No, you need to be working with somebody. You need to figure out how to create your own sense of safety. And we can go into that, but then through that update and doing it outside of the arena. Okay. What normally triggers me? Okay. My horse gets spooky. Okay. What does that feel like inside of me? What would I not want to happen? And actually get your system used to that and connect with your system as that's happening so that it's not a cue of danger anymore. So now you're widening your capacity. Now you're updating cues of danger. Now when you're in the arena, there are things that you can do, simple things that you can do to regulate yourself during it. But most of the heavy lifting is done before you ever get on your horse. And then it's kind of more like interventions once you're on the horse.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I know everyone is going to want to talk about, okay, well, tell me what I can do when I'm in the arena because I'm headed to my lesson right now. And I think that, we just did this episode on spooking. And so it was very, very horse behavior focused, but also very focused on the relationship between the horse and the rider. And it came up for me that, so many people ask the question of, well, I can't ride 6 horses a day, 6 days a week. So how can I become a better rider in the limited time that I have when I don't have a ton of access to horses? And it's like, well, this is kind of the answer a little bit. Like we're not talking necessarily about, skill building or like, building, more specific mechanical skills on the horse, but a huge part of riding that we overlook all the time is our regulation on our horse and how it affects them and our relationship with them. And this is the stuff you can do outside of the saddle, which is like incredibly empowering, really. It's like a huge opportunity.
It's a huge opportunity. And it is one misunderstanding I think about the work that I do is that it's really heavy and really sad. Like my groups are like, this is so fun and so empowering and so life-changing. And I had even a one-to-one client. She came to me through a client that did have a very heavy situation with a horse passing away. And she was like a little resistant. And then after the first session, she messaged me. She's like, I am so giddy. I didn't know what to expect. This is not what I was expecting. But it is so empowering to go from my emotional state is at the whim of the wind versus my emotional state is completely within my hands. What could be more empowering than that? Yeah. Literally nothing. So I'm going to tell you something, and it's really simple. You have to get good at what you don't want to feel. That's very simple. In practice, it's hard. So let me give you an example. Before this podcast, I'm a good student. I do my own work. So I'm like, all right, what's going on? You excited? I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, but then there was another part that was like, I want to do it right. Like, I want to be good at this. And then I was like, yeah. And so what wouldn't you want to feel? And I was like, okay, underprepared. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not good at it. And so I was like, okay, well, you can feel that. Your safety doesn't depend on that. You don't have to avoid that. Because if you're avoiding it, and it happens, your nervous system is going to put you in a state of protection. Your nervous system and your ego are avoidance strategies. So I had to feel into what it would feel like to not get it right, to not be good enough, to not be smart, and it took me like 90 seconds or less. Yeah. Neuroscience would even say it takes 90 seconds or less. So I just sat with that part. It was in my chest. I breathed into it. And I came here willing to be bad at this, willing to get something wrong. And there's no proving energy. It's just like, I am. And so that's the state you need to get in with your horse and our horses. So, and my client, even yesterday, she has a big clinic coming up. And I was like, okay, what wouldn't you want to feel at the clinic? And her response was hilarious. She was like, I'm okay making one mistake, but I don't want to keep repeating mistakes. And it was just like this really funny maze that her ego had created. And so I'm like, okay, what would it feel like if you just kept repeating the same mistake? And ultimately it would feel not good enough. And then really when we really worked it and integrated in, it was a younger part when she was 16 being belittled by a coach who didn't get it right on like the second or third time. And it was in front of peers and all these things. So now there's this misunderstanding, and there's now a cue of danger in her nervous system that says one mistake is okay, two mistakes are not. But then what's going to happen? She's going to be avoiding making mistakes. She's not going to be able to learn. She's not going to be, I am, nothing to prove, nothing to do. So it's paradoxical, but we felt into what it feels like to not be good enough, what it feels like to make two mistakes. Okay, it's a sensation, and it was in her throat, shoulder kind of area. We felt into it. And then I said, okay, now imagine being 16, but riding from this place. She's like, yeah, it's just light. I can stay in the game. I'm present. I said, okay, now imagine riding in the clinic from this place. She's like, I'm just open. I can stay in the game, nothing to prove. And that's where you want to be. And that's a skill that you can create that comes from feeling what you don't want to feel. So visualization, I don't like people to visualize things going well. First of all, that I can talk about that. But visualize what you not to make it happen, because that's not how it works, but to bring up all the sensations that your nervous system would try to innocently protect you from feeling by kind of shutting you down or making you run away, right? And preemptively feel it now so that your nervous system's like, oh, that's safe. We can feel that. So inevitably, when you make a second mistake in a clinic, you can stay present. You can stay in the game, which is what we're wanting.
It is counterintuitive in some ways, because I think about these loops that we get in with the way that we think and the way that we feel, where like you have a difficult horse that you ride. And so every time you're headed to the barn, there's like a little bit of dread in the pit of your stomach. And you're like, this could go badly. This could go badly. This could go badly. Why would I want to feel that more?
Okay.
Like,
well, because first of all, you're not feeling it. You're just thinking about it, which is only teaching yourself that this is something we need to avoid. We're not comfortable with this. We don't like this. Let's avoid this. So then I bet you probably notice that you procrastinate with that horse, or you overcorrect that horse. And she's shaking her head. Yes, right? So all of these are avoidance strategies. Okay, when I help people learn this, I talk about the lonely girl. This is my favorite example, okay? Think about a lonely girl. This girl, in her, teens to early 20s that just doesn't want to feel lonely. Okay, we've all been her or we know her. Okay, it's a very easy scenario. This girl does not want to feel lonely, right? That's something she's not comfortable feeling. So then what does she do? She gets in relationships with whoever. Mm-hmm. She's not choosy. She doesn't hold boundaries. Paradoxically, how does she end up feeling?
Yeah, lonely.
Lonely, not good enough, confirming what she didn't want to feel. So if she would have felt loneliness, the actual somatic sense of lonely. And I know a client, we've done this, and her response was, that was like a period cramp. I've been avoiding this my whole life for a period. Like, she's like, that was nothing, that was way less painful than my dating life. And so you have to actually feel the somatic sense of lonely. So you're not avoiding that. So your nervous system isn't protecting you from that, because then it will not allow you to set boundaries. It won't allow you to speak your truth. So that lonely girl now is a whole girl. she's like, she doesn't need anything. She's going to then attract a boyfriend or a mate that reflects that back to her. So if you're avoiding a horse, that because you don't want to feel incompetent or like you don't know the answers, if we really follow that back, it's not good enough. You just need to feel that sense of what it's like to be not good enough. And actually, without your brain making meaning of it, it's just energy. It feels maybe tingly, maybe dense, maybe tight, whatever it is. You're just going to feel it. You're going to notice that it dissipates and goes away, and that you actually now feel the opposite. You're actually now feeling a true sense of wholeness or okayness or beyond enoughness. So now when your horse is acting up, now your nervous system isn't going to take you into a state of protection, and you're like, I can stay in the game. I can figure this out. I can stay present while this thing that I was trying to avoid is happening, which is more effective.
But I feel like this has a lot of ties to like stoicism. Have you studied that at all?
Yes, of course. Yes, it does. It does.
I don't know a lot about it, but I'm seeing a lot of because it doesn't stoicism kind of teach you to like sit in the uncomfortable and like that's.
Yeah,
I think
I just kind of made a post about this too. It's what every other stoicism, it was on the right track, but what everybody is missing is creating safety. It is not about
just sitting in the discomfort.
Exactly. It's not about being uncomfortable for the sake of being uncomfortable. You know, this also follows is Buddhism. They don't just love suffering. They know that if you presence yourself, if you connect with that, you paradoxically feel the opposite. So this is so paradoxical, but if you want to go into the arena and you want to feel, I have a problem with this word, confident, but if you want to feel confident, you want to feel capable in that arena, you have to somatically feel with presence, with safety into the parts that don't feel comfortable. Because if you're avoiding, if you're saying, no, you can't be this or that, that's going to create a cue of danger. Then inevitably, when you get in the arena and something like that happens, your nervous system is going to take you into a state of protection. Not optimal.
Yeah. Why do you have a problem with the word confidence? That's interesting.
Because confidence is not what we want. We want wholeness. We want safety. We want presence. Confidence is conditional. Confidence is saying, I'm allowed to feel something because I have the proof that I'm good at it. Wonder if you're doing something for the first time. You're not going to feel confident. So if you're relying on something that's conditional, you're putting yourself in a really not optimal position. You want wholeness. You want something that says, regardless of what I do or what happens, I'm safe, I'm okay, and I'm inherently enough. Not, I'm so good at this, so I get to be confident. It's conditional. I mean, how many times, it works like a pendulum. How many times have you felt really confident, like all of your practices have been going so well, then you get into dressage warm up and your horse spooks and then he trips and he snorts or, doesn't, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't even know how to ride. We don't want that. Yeah. We do not want confidence. It's conditional. We want wholeness. Wholeness is stable, is something that is not affected by the current circumstances. And that is a way more effective and optimal place to be.
That's really cool. I want to talk about the S word next, because so much of the theme of what you've been saying is, that perception of not being enough. I think shame is, often the perception that we're bad, that we are bad, not that we did something bad. Shame has a place in the discussion of nervous system dysregulation. When I say shame, and when this comes up in your conversations with clients, what do those conversations look like? How does shame operate in them? What does it do to us?
Oh, shame is the thing and even if you don't resonate with that word, I wouldn't have resonated with that word if you would have told me that at 22. If me now was sitting in front of 22-year-old me and said, hey, the reason why you are so stuck and the reason why you are not achieving what you want to has nothing to do with your skill, but has everything to do with the amount of shame that is in your nervous system, I would have been like, girl, you have no clue what you're talking about. Like, I love me and I love my life. And I don't know what I would have said, but I wouldn't have been like, oh, really? Tell me more. I mean, maybe if she kept talking. But at first, like if I would have saw like a paper about shame, I would have kept on flipping through. That has nothing to do with me. But actually, it is probably the thing that is keeping you from achieving your goals. So shame is this biological thing that happens to us. And it's a really imperative thing for our survival because our safety is dependent on people outside of us to keep us alive. Shame happens when we aren't receiving love, when we aren't receiving unconditional acceptance and okayness. Then shame comes along and says, hey, who and what you are is not okay. You better change it real quick if you want to survive. And there's simple examples to this that would have happened all the time unconsciously in your life. Dr. Gabor Mate gives a really good example about this. And maybe I won't go, if you're curious about it, we can go into it. But so shames is exactly what you said. It's not that I've done something wrong. It's that I am wrong. Okay. So now we have this misunderstanding that I am wrong or I'm not enough. So now we have a nervous system that doesn't want to feel this, I'm not enough. So it's going to be, in a defensive state, in an avoidance state, trying to help you avoid that. And now your ego is also trying to help you avoiding that, layering judgment on top of that shame. Like you need to be, say, or do something different than you are right in this moment for you to be okay. And it is very believable. It is very like, yes, I need to do or say something different. I need to be 10 pounds skinnier. I need to be in a different outfit. My hair needs to be looking a different way. I need to be speaking in a different way right now so that I can belong. And by humans, if we're in the position to choose authenticity or connection, we will always give up authenticity and choose connection. So until we enforce our safety. So now we have this misunderstanding that we're enough, and our brains are not truth finders. They're evidence finding machines. So now we're in a lesson, we make 2 mistakes. Oh, more evidence that I'm not enough. And so your nervous system is now it doesn't like that feeling, right? You have no capacity around that feeling. So your nervous system is now going to protect you from that. And this is where kind of like self-sabotaging behaviors come in. Maybe you're procrastinating. And maybe you don't even realize you're not fully committed and fully in, but I can guarantee you that you're not. If your intelligence system is trying to help you avoid something, it's going to be successful. And so you might be showing up, but you're not showing up fully if that's underneath you. And I can tell you from top 5-star writers down to my people that are going starter, the root of everything is I'm not good enough. And we have to create capacity for that, feel it, so then we can feel the opposite. We can feel wholeness. But it affects everything from the way we show up to lessons, from the way we treat our horses, from the opportunities that we take, from the coaches we allow ourselves to be with. It affects everything.
One of the things that was so important for me to ask you about today was, because you and I have discussed this a little bit, the profound cost of shame to ourselves and to our horses.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Shame affects everything from our position on a horse, to how we treat our horses, to how we treat ourselves, and how coaches are treating us. We use shame because it is effective. Biologically, it's effective. But it will stop behaviors. It won't necessarily replace it with a good thing.
What do you mean it's effective? Talk to me about that.
If let's say you're riding in a lesson and your coach doesn't want you to be doing something, and she starts shaming you that, you're not a good listener, you're not dedicated, you're not this.
So specifically the verbiage of you are, not
Yeah.
I see you doing. Is
Right.
that the difference? Is that what makes it shaming?
Yes.
In your
that's
view?
what makes it shaming. But also, if your brain has a misunderstanding that I'm not enough, and that safety is going to be pulled away from me if I act this way, that's shaming. That's like, I'm not trying to like say, people are doing this unconsciously, right? This is not a judgment. I'm not layering judgment on top of judgment. But yeah, like if we are manipulating and raising our voices and trying to create an emotional response in you so that you don't keep repeating something, that's shame. And biologically so let's go into Dr. Gabor Mate's analogy. He always uses this analogy that you're 2 years old, you want a cookie, right? And before dinner, and your mom says no, like a good mother, right? She's not going to let you have a cookie. But you're 2, you can't regulate your own emotions, you start crying, and you get really frustrated, right? So the way most of us were parented, if not even more severe, is we were told, oh, if you're going to act like that, if this is how you are going to be, you need to go away from me. You need to go into that corner, which is directly threatening our biology. We need to be connected. So this little person that's now in the corner, if they stop crying, it's not because they've learned that behavior is bad. It's because their nervous system has tried everything, and this was the last thing that created more connection. It's more like a disassociation, and then they stop crying, and then the mom comes back. It learns that okay, I need to say, do, or be something different to keep my safety. So it tries everything, and eventually it tries stop crying. What the mom could have done and should have done is said, oh, you're frustrated. That's attunement. That's saying, I see you, which to us is safety, is connection. I see it. You're frustrated. It makes sense you're frustrated. You still can't have the cookie. And that's okay if you're frustrated. Mm-hmm. And if she would have said, that makes sense, and it's okay that you're frustrated, you still can't do the behavior. But what's happening inside of you, I'm not going to take away your safety from. Then there's attunement. The emotion would go away probably in 90 seconds. But we don't. So when the kid is in the corner without that, then the brain comes online and says, I'm wrong. It shames ourselves to then have the biological response to go through, okay, what works? What gets connection back? And now it says, not that I did something wrong, but that I'm wrong, because you're in the egocentric part of your development. Everything that happens to you is because of you. So I'm wrong. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy of being with. And it really does work like that. Man. And so then you have that going out through life. So you're going to probably even be in positions where you chose coaches to kind of confirm that. That's definitely a position I was in. And so to somebody else that, the coach is shaming, if they had a really great attunement and upbringing, they would be like, oh, no. Don't speak to me. I don't deserve this. This isn't going to work. But we believe this is, I deserve this. Something is innately wrong with me. So then your nervous system is going to be offering up all of these different ways to stop that behavior. So it's effective in stopping behavior. It's not effective in replacing it with good behavior. That's why you see people like in lessons shutting down or getting really aggressive, or they will do something different, but it's not a good different. It's not an effective different. They're not all of a sudden with great contact and great feel from shame. No, from science would say that wouldn't happen. So what we need to do is be able to create safety, give feedback with safety to our horses and to ourselves.
I don't know why. This is the question that I have from what you just said. And maybe it's a weird question. If we are leaving or ending an experience, whether it's a lesson or a clinic or a show, we'll just say lesson, because you've got a relationship with your trainer that often shapes that experience. You have a relationship with your horse too that often shapes that experience. But how should we leave those lessons feeling?
When somebody shamed you?
No, just in an ideal world, how should we leave those lessons feeling? What should we be looking for in how we leave our lessons to know whether our relationship with our trainer is operating correctly?
This is a really good question. You should leave however reality was. Like, you're allowed to feel, challenged. You're allowed to feel like I didn't perform great. You're allowed to be disappointed. What you shouldn't be feeling, what I would be careful about feeling, is a global sense of I can't, and and unsupported and confused.
Okay.
And like a global sense of like, I'm just not good enough to do this. And they think the same thing.
Yeah. And your horse probably does too.
I'll tell you one really interesting study that when I was a teacher, I read, and it really stuck with me. It is a really simple study, and a teacher graded papers, okay? And for 50% of the papers, all she did was grade it with the marks, the red marks, and put a sticky note with the grade and had the marks, right? And the other 50%, she did the same thing, but on the sticky note, all she said was, you can do better. Like 90% of those kids fixed the mistakes and turned the paper back in, because someone was saying, I believe you. I see you in your wholeness. It's okay that you're struggling, but I see you in your wholeness, and you can come up here. And that's as horse trainers, like that, or not even trainers, like if you have a horse, you're holding it to their standards. You're not globally naming your horse incapable or POS or like a bad boy. No, he might be doing bad things might be happening, but you need to hold a stable, like, I believe in you and I'm with you. And your coach should have the same thing. And that doesn't mean he or she is Pollyannish. As a coach, and I'm fully capable of telling you, like, no, you're lying to yourself. You're not taking responsibility. But I'm telling you it in a container that I'm here to support you through that. And I'm going to show you how. And my safety and okayness, my emotionality is not going to change.
Man, that's nuts. This whole conversation, I'm just like, it's so, I will never stop being shocked by how many parallels there are between parenting and being in a relationship, being in a romantic relationship, and horseback riding.
You know what it all has? Nervous system and connection. They are literally all doing the same thing. They're mirroring to you, they're a reciprocal relationship, and they're either mirroring to you cues of safety or cues of danger, and where you are still attached to outcomes.
Attached to outcomes. Yeah.
For your safety. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where you're still outsourcing to outcomes.
Yeah, that reminds me of the lonely girl example. Yeah.
It's the best example.
It's very, hits a little close to home. All right. I want to talk about some tendencies we see in high performing individuals. And then I want you to talk to me about these athlete archetypes that you have, because this just is like my favorite thing ever. You had a post that you put up that talks about when we experience an emotion, if that emotion is not processed, then your ego, as you say, comes online. And then what happens? Ultimately, it judges you. And to avoid that emotion, we use these avoidance strategies. And one of the things that strikes me about avoidance strategies is that so many high-performing people and their go-to behaviors will fall under this. So the example that comes to mind is, as I've told you, I'm a very beginner runner training for a half marathon, but I like to look at the content that like these ultra marathoners and these Ironman athletes put out, because it's just very interesting to me why you would ever want to do that.
Yeah.
But But it is inspiring, like what the human body can do. And one of the things that people talk about a lot with distance running is that it's their therapy, because essentially they become so exhausted that then they don't have to think about their problems. Like they're overriding, addressing their dysregulation or their issues by just completely just baseline exhausting themselves. And it makes me think about, I'm very fortunate to, be able to talk to a lot of high performing riders and athletes in this sport over the course of my career. And the underlying theme to so many of those conversations about like what makes you successful is like, well, I work harder than anybody else. And that certainly is often true. However, a lot of those same riders who have, gone to the Olympics, or they've done something amazing, they've gone to the championship, they've reached the goal that they worked really, really hard to reach. They talk about the letdown of it a little bit. Or for some of them, I've had discussions with, that they acted or behaved in a way that they never thought that they would do in order to reach those goals, because that they needed the validation of reaching it. They needed to prove something to themselves.
Yeah. Ooh, there's a lot to break down. There's so much to break down in that, but it really breaks my heart to hear about when an athlete reaches their goal and it's maybe a relief at best. There's nothing, like, I get a little teary thinking about it. There's nothing that breaks my heart more, because all of their actions came from an avoidance of feeling less than. And they're recognizing that no outer achievement will heal an inner wound. And what a way to spend your life kind of figuring that out, when the journey itself could have been everything. So that's why my whole system works. And I want to go into the ego spiral, as you brought up, because it's really important. But we think that we buy into the fact that I'll be happy when I win the Olympics. Okay. I'll be happy when I win the Olympics. The lonely girl thinks I won't be lonely when I'm in a relationship. Mm-hmm. If we always want freedom to something. We don't want freedom from something. We don't want to get in a relationship from a freedom from loneliness. We don't want to go to the Olympics from a freedom of not being good enough. We want to be I am, and now from wholeness, from being whole, worthy, and complete in this exact moment. Now, how do I want to play the game? How do I want to show up? Knowing that it's all a game. It doesn't mean anything about the truth of who and what I am. From that place, you can feel greatness in every moment. And how are you going to achieve greatness if you don't feel it in this moment? If you're buying into the misunderstanding that it's something outside of you. This is actually why I have a problem with the rhetoric around purpose. Purpose is not outside of you. Purpose is in this exact moment. Can you be whole and present in this moment? This is it. This is the moment. And if you treat every moment and you're in integrity with yourself and in the moment, there's no way that can't manifest into greatness. But if you're buying into the misunderstanding that greatness is outside of you or an achievement, you might get it. There are people that get it from there, but it's not going to feel good when you get it. And number two, if you're more like me, it's going to block you from getting it. And you're going to achieve way more from being whole, worthy, and present in this moment. This is it. This is your purpose. How are you showing up to this moment? And so that's where I really got into what don't you want to feel? Because we want freedom to, not freedom from. What don't you want to feel? How can you have inner freedom in this moment? So then every moment has freedom and that it manifests into something that you want. But yes, I find with equestrian athletes, their answer to everything is to work harder.
Yes.
That's not the best answer. That is not. That's not the best answer all the time. I mean, I acknowledge you. I see your grit. I see your determination. I see the innocence in that and not knowing what else to do. But
Yeah.
it's not the answer.
It's got to be when we don't know what else to do. And
So
this is what the whiteboard's coming out, everyone. Okay, I love this. She went and grabbed her whiteboard. She's getting serious.
This is so important. Oh, but yeah, like we kind of sometimes too, we glorify the hardworking. This isn't.
It's a badge of honor.
It's a badge of honor, but
that's how we come up with this. If you're not in the hospital, then you better get back on. Like, this is the ultimate badge of honor in equestrian riding, or in equestrian sports, is how hard you work to get there. That's why every single time I ask any athlete, like, I won't say anytime I ask them, like, if you listen to a press conference at like the Olympics, it's like, how did you get here? Hard work. I worked harder than you. That's how I got here. It's just the ultimate badge of honor.
I think it's just a misunderstanding. What they did was they stayed in the game longer.
Right.
It's not the hard work. And we all work hard. Like I work really hard, but it's from presence, and it's not from an avoidance of. It's from a love of it. Like, I have a beyond full client load, beyond full groups. I'm not doing it because I'm avoiding not feeling good enough. I have freedom to it because this is what I love to do. That's a completely different energetic. The other one, you're going to burn out. You're going to procrastinate. You're going to judge. You're going to feel like crap. From the love of it, then you're just a part of, I hate to say this, but nature. You're just doing it because this is what we came here to do. We came here to expand, grow, and give, just like nature. But when we can do that, that's like when we can have true freedom and actually enjoy our lives. But like, even perfectionism, right? We all are like, oh, she's a perfectionist. Like, and we kind of use that. That's an avoidance strategy. That's, I don't feel good enough, right? And then your ego comes along. You don't want to feel I'm not good enough, right? We don't want to feel that. That's not a good feeling to feel. And then your ego is going to come online, and it's going to either try to defend, it's going to try to prove, protect, or perfect. And so the ego's like, okay, in order for you to not feel good enough, you got to be perfect. You got to be the perfect weight. You have to have the perfect clothes. You have to do, say, and be the perfect thing at all the time in order for you not to feel this. And then too, it's going to argue with reality. Like, say you should or shouldn't be the way you are, or like, let's say the conditions aren't what you want. Like, it shouldn't be raining right now. The ground shouldn't be hard, whatever it is. Yeah. And then it's going to either judge others, like, oh, she's doing this, how we do it. It's natural. Like, she shouldn't be this way. Our coach shouldn't be this way. Our horse shouldn't be this way. And then to really keep yourself in this avoidance strategy, away from this emotion, your ego is going to judge yourself. Oh, you're too this, you didn't do this right, you're not smart enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not fast enough, you're fill in the blank, you aren't. Mm-hmm. So to keep you away from this. And then we have these outer avoidance strategies. Like, I put over or under exercise. That is an avoidance strategy that, I mean, I am the queen of avoidance. That's why I know this pattern so well.
This is me too, for sure.
And knowledge.
I'm like, I'll go on a 2-hour run. Yeah. It's fine. I'm literally running away from my problems.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, my brain's talking to me. Nope. I got to go to the gym. Yeah. Knowledge is an avoidance strategy. I can't tell you how many people have self-diagnosed. Everyone's a narcissist. Oh. Everyone. I mean, knowledge is an avoidance strategy too. And wine, weed, under or over exercising, all of these are avoidance strategies. Like, almost any and all addiction can be summed down to this. Like, we all say addiction is genetic. It is absolutely not. They have never found addiction on a chromosome. What it is it's passed down through your nervous system and the imprints of your nervous system. And so this is a way of avoiding alcohol, or whatever you're addicted to, is a way of feeling this main emotion. So this is why my work says, what don't you want to feel? Let's feel this. So then all of this just magically goes away. Like another thing I really hear like athletes talk about is like, I just need the thoughts to go get out of my mind. And so then they do mindset work, or they try to do mindfulness and try to decide which thought is better. I saw this app like open saying like deciphering which thought is the one you should act on is the most powerful tool we can have. I'm like, that is the worst advice I've ever heard. No. None of your thoughts are real. To decipher if one is good or one is bad, you've already lost. No, you want to be present. You want to be okay. You want to have one cohesive thought line. If you're deciphering between thoughts, you need to get into the body. You need to feel an emotion. The thoughts will go away.
Producing good results is a very common conversation. When we're looking at, and to go back to this clinic video that was just circulating around, those are riders that are being developed in the kind of U.S. pipeline to be future riders. And so this is something that that you mentioned this to me, and it really, really stood out to me. You've expressed that, and you are somebody who works with lots of American riders and lots of top riders, but have seen all the European riders and all the UK riders, and that you've noticed a difference, and that you feel more shame and desperation in American riders than you do riders in other countries. And I have not been able to get this out of my head since you said it to me like over a month ago. Why do you think that is? What is driving that? What's behind that?
It is something that I've noticed, and it definitely a pattern, but because I haven't like been, and I never was like in a yard in Europe or anything like that. But I have definitely noticed a pattern in warm up, and it's not all, but it is shocking the shame that is happening in our warm ups. And then when you see a video that's been circulating that's developing our riders from shame, and we've talked about this, like this, if we're talking about this is not a judgment, but this is an attempt to look at what's effective and what's not. And shaming our riders, coming from this desperation of like, I need this to validate myself. I need this to say I'm worthy and I'm good enough. That's going to create such an environment that does not foster effective and good results. It's going to foster shame. It's because coaches are going to be believing this is a representation of me. I've got to make you do something. They're going to get in their nervous system in a state that shame feels like a good idea, yelling, belittling, which is not effective, is not going to get your results. And if you watch that video, you see it's a downward spiral of not getting good results. So we have to learn what's an effective way. Like if that's not working, let's move away from that. Let's not double down and defend that. Like, there's a lot of people that are defending that. And I get that. And I get that because, hey, I've made mistakes. I've done things from shame. I've shamed other people. It's hard to say, hey, I've done that and it's wrong. And then I can have the capacity to not judge, but be able to stay within reality and say, that's not effective. Right. So I think that's what we need to do is like, how can we stay in reality and see what's effective and what's not effective, and belittling people and saying you don't belong basically here is not producing top athletes. That's not conducive to top athletes.
Man. I think that so many people are going to say to that, but we have had top athletes and they have been coached this way. So like, if it's worked in the past, then won't it keep working? But what you're saying is shame begets shame.
I'm saying they did it despite that. Because of it. Not because of it. They got it despite that. So if we've ever been to the top, then if we...
That's a conversation for another podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to but if we've ever been to the top and that's how we got there, we did it with two hands tied behind our back, biologically, literally. Two. We've been doing it from two defensive states. So imagine the results that we could be producing if we just honored simple biology and science, which says emotional safety and attunement creates better environments and better results.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody will enjoy it more.
Yeah. And the horses will benefit from
And
it.
the horses will benefit. That's really what I see that's so sad is like once we start feeling less than, then we're going to start projecting that onto our horse. The aids are going to get pretty aggressive. That's not effective communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't deserve that, in my opinion.
No, it's our responsibility to fix ourselves so that they don't pay the price for our shame.
Yeah. One thing that I notice with a lot with amateurs, and amateurs, just bear with me, but you feel entitled. You feel like your horse owes you something because you've given it a nice stall and give it great shoes. And I just totally disagree with that. I don't think they owe you anything. And of course they can't be dangerous and they can't, but you labeling your horse like, oh, he's so bad, or like, he doesn't want to do this or whatever. Like, I think it's like living in reality a bit more, getting the feedback from your horse and not taking it so personally and not from the lens of they owe you anything, because they don't. They didn't hold up a sign and say, choose me to get on me and spur me and whip me around and confuse me. They didn't do that. So I think it's just a little bit of humility and grace with them, and a little bit of like, if they do it, it's a privilege, it's grace. Instead of like, they owe it to me and they're so naughty. They do things right when you ask right.
Yeah.
They perform well when you set them up to perform well. I love this quote by JJ Tate. They're like, if you love your horse, ride better. What I would add to that is, if you love your horse, learn to regulate your nervous system so that you can ride better.
Natalie, at the end of every episode, we do something called 3 Little Things. I did not prepare you for this. This has been such an amazing discussion about wholeness and about shame and where it comes from and how it lives in our body, and how the nervous system delivers that to our brain, and we can tell stories. But it's a conversation about how we have so much more power than we think we do. And we don't have to be subjected to all of the things in the world that we cannot control. And if we want to be good riders with these sentient, sensitive beings, then we have a responsibility to address that. And so in closing this conversation, what are 3 little things that anyone who's listening can do today? It can be an exercise, it can be just a mantra, it can be a thought, it can just be some advice, for us to live a little bit more in tune with ourselves, a little bit more regulated, and a little bit more whole.
Okay, 3 little things. First would be taking responsibility from a really not dogmatic, not shameful, but from an empowered, like, I am creating my results and I am creating my reality. So 1, taking responsibility. Whatever limiting or exceptional results you have, take responsibility for all of it. And then from that responsibility, you'll notice the feedback and the holes that you're having trouble navigating. And then, so second, honestly, there's not a better investment than you could do than investing in healing and widening your capacity of your nervous system. There's not a better investment. It has changed my complete life. Not only what I've been able to achieve and do, but how I feel and how I've been able to create impact in other people's lives. So not a better investment that you could do. And then 3, try gracefully start attuning to yourself. I have clients that, if you're a professional and you have like 6 horses, a good pattern is they do it between every horse. If you have like a really patterned day, do it between any transition. Or if you don't, if you have a really wild day, no day ever looks the same, set alarms on your phone. And it looks like this. It's a really simple process. you just kind of start tuning into your internal state, and you start noticing, like, oh, what's here? Oh, I feel a little overwhelmed. I feel a little scattered. I feel happy. I feel excited. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. Just noticing how you feel. And if you can't put a name, that's fine. But just starting to develop a sense of what's happening. And then now turn to the sensations of your body. What's happening? Is your chest tight? Is there a lump in your throat? Is there a ball in your stomach? Where's the energy? And can you just tell yourself there's no outer solution for this energy? There's no checking off my to-do list. There's no achievement that's going to solve this. The only thing that's going to solve it is you saying, you can feel this. And so just breathe into that place in your chest, throat, or stomach. Take about 90 seconds. Just do it. Just allow whatever's happening to happen. I'm doing it now. Use your breath, not to get rid of it, but to help you stay with it. And you'll notice that it starts to dissipate, starts to dissolve. And you'll notice you're left with a lot more presence. And not presence like hyper awareness or hyper focus or like a meditation. You feel safe. You created safety. And then if you repeat that pattern, what that's going to do is going to build your awareness to when you're slipping out of it, and it's going to give you a tool to get back to it.
So freaking good. I feel it right now. Natalie, this has been an amazing conversation. I mean, this could not come at a better time. These are the conversations that I think are taking have such a foothold in the horse world right now, because people are really understanding the value of it, and also that this is what accountability looks like a little bit for ourselves. This is what taking responsibility for ourselves looks like. A quote that I love, and it's a little bit tangential to this, but it's about mental illness, is like mental illness is not, because our conversation's not been about mental illness, but mental illness is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And I think that's relevant to kind of the way that we can think about this. Like, not everything that has happened to you is your fault, but it is your responsibility if you're going to be in relationship with others and with horses and with your children. And I love the message that you have to share, and the way that you have to share it, and that it's, you've done the research and it's so science-backed, and it just really feels like something we can trust.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I love what your quote that you just said, that it is our responsibility. And if you're anything like me, I would have said, what happened to me in the past, I'm over it. I'm here now. But what we are missing is the simple fact that we run from those imprints. We operate from those imprints 90 to 95% of the time. So if you're feeling stuck, you're not getting the results you want, it's because we have to go and take a look at the things that happened to us and the imprints it caused, and update them so that we're not just a pattern defense, things just operating, that we can actually operate from safety and okayness and outside of our patterns. If you want to get unstuck, you have to look back. And it's not as sad or hard as you think. It's a really graceful and nice process, and it frees you and everyone else in the process. So I really encourage everyone to do that. But Caroline, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I feel like you always elicit the best and deepest conversations, and given everyone such a incredible platform to do it. And you're so thoughtful, and the way you've prepared really set us up for such a great conversation. So thank you so much for involving me, having me, and all the effort you put into it. It's definitely felt.
Thank you so much.